Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 62 of the Stephen King podcast. And today we're going to talk exclusively about The Dark Tower. And Lou is with me here as usual. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Hello, constant listeners. Glad to be back.
Yep. And the reason we are doing this is basically because Entertainment Weekly released their Comic-Con issue and had a lot of stuff. I think they had like 7 parts with interviews and stuff about the movie and everything. So we're going to talk about it, and we're not holding back here. So if you don't want to know anything about this movie, and we don't have any inside information, but we're going to speculate like crazy here. So if you don't want to know anything and don't want to hear any guesses, I guess you're going to have to wait to listen to this podcast until the movie is out, I guess. It's interesting and it's fun to speculate and guess and see what we can figure out.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we can draw a fairly good map for large portions of the movies. There's still some specific parts that I can't quite wrap my head around, and me and Hans will talk about that. Maybe Hans has some ideas for me. But there's a lot of great stuff in this articles, and I don't know if we mentioned this last podcast, but it was quite a coup for this movie, the Dark Tower movie, to get EW to put their movie on the cover, the Comic-Con edition of the magazine. And I think this is probably the first real bit of social media awareness that the general public has gotten about this movie, because I don't think a lot of people are still up to this point were even aware that this movie was being made beyond the fan base, who of course was reacting to all the casting news and whatnot. So that was quite a coup, and we really have to tip our hat off to EW and specifically Anthony Breznican, who was the writer on this article and is also a big Stephen King fan, and he's left us with a lot of cool things to think about and speculate on. And we're just this is just going to be a lot of fun. So stick around, and we're going to kick it off with the first article, right, Hans?
Yes, and that is an interview with Idris Elba.
Yeah.
And I think also that one gave us the first official photo from the movie. Up until then, we had only seen photos taken by people who visited the set or just happened to be there and took some photographs, mainly from the New York shooting.
Yeah.
But now we got a professional shot of Idris Elba standing in, I don't know exactly what he's standing in, what kind of room that is.
Are you talking about with the fire?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's supposed to be an altar room to the Crimson King.
The first article is an interview with Idris Elba about the Gunslinger and about him playing Roland. They also mentioned the fact that that Roland is portrayed as a blue-eyed cowboy. And he is definitely not a blue-eyed cowboy. And his take on that is to just ignore it, basically, and just play it along, and like that isn't a problem. But that is the biggest problem that we heard people talking about, at least up until now. So it would be interesting if they could have gone a little bit deeper, I think, in what his thoughts was when he was offered the role. From what I understand, he hadn't read the Dark Tower books when he was offered the role, but I expect that once he read them, he must also have gotten the feeling that he might not be looking like Roland in the books. And that I think would have been interesting to hear more about what his thought was then. Also, they are talking a little bit about the scenes, and I think that the one scene we know will happen, and the one scene we have seen most photos from, is when Roland entered the Dixie Pig.
Yep.
And it seems like the interior shot of that was filmed in South Africa, and the exterior was shot in New York.
Yeah.
But that is basically the only scene we have heard really described, right?
Yes. Yeah. That was a set report done by Anthony Breznican. He was on set for 2 days, and that was the scenes they were talking about. And it's kind of funny that sort of led to, in a roundabout way, a question that I was asking on the internet, that Dark Tower podcast had asked Anthony a question because he was doing another interview with Idris Elba about what accent would Roland be speaking, and that led to that interview, and there's some really interesting clues in that interview beyond just whether Roland or Idris Elba was going to use his natural British voice or do an American accent. And we did find out that they decided to go with an American accent, but a flat one, like older style, which I that's a good choice. I don't really think there was a wrong accent that he could have used, like, because if he had gone with his British accent, you could just say that, well, he's speaking that way because he's related to the King Arthur line of Eld family. So that was an interesting video. And circling back to the article that we're talking about, I like Idris. There's not much he can say about what Roland looks like based on the books and the pictures, but I do like the fact that he's talking about the fact that if they were just making an action movie, that doesn't really appeal to him. He wants to bring some depth to the character and make it a real character, which is exactly what I think everybody wants to happen as well. So he's talking about the fact that they are filming different takes of scenes. Some are more action oriented and others are more like independent films. So that's pretty cool. And I like the fact that they're showing that Roland they're talking about how competent he is, his style of chasing down the men in black, the fact that he doesn't waste or he's not show-offy with his talents. He's pretty well business. The people in the Dixie Pig don't want to mess with him, the Tahine, but when push comes to shove, Roland is quite capable of defending himself. So I really like the fact that he's very efficient in his approach to combat and things of that nature. So it is interesting. I think the biggest thing, like you said here, that we could take out of this article, though, is the fact that he's in the Dixie Pig to begin with. So, because this is something that doesn't come into the series till quite a bit later. And I think this is part of the overall approach that we can take as to how they're pulling from the other books in order to start this first movie. But yeah, there's some interesting stuff in there. I am kind of puzzled why he said Roland's only 200 years old, though. Because he's quite a bit older, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was happy that he didn't speak British, because that to me that would have sounded wrong.
Mm.
But I am a little bit disappointed that he didn't make the voice so we could hear it. I mean, they were filming him, so he could have said something in that voice to let us know how it sounded instead of just describing it. So that would have been fine, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing, and I'm not sure exactly if I'm picking this from the first article because they are mixing it and it's a little bit confusing to exactly where everything was said, but something that struck me was that he said that Roland isn't a man of many words.
Mm-hmm.
But I am listening to the audio version of the books now, and I'm up to like mid of the third book. And even though Roland isn't a blabbermouth that talks all the time, but I don't think he is. I don't see him as someone that just say yes and no and stuff like that. I think he is like a normal talking person, even though, I mean, he tells stories about when he was a kid and everything like that. So it's not just that he's just a yes or no man.
I think the thing that we have to remember here is he's talking about this specific movie.
Yeah.
And if you remember, the Gunslinger Roland doesn't say a lot in that book, right? He does talk when he has to, but he's pretty stripped down. It's not really till he gets the quartet together that he has to start opening up and talking a lot more. So I would say that they're probably emphasizing that more, just to say that's his state of mind at the beginning of this first movie, is that he's very shut down. He's actually more focused on just revenge on the Man in Black as opposed to getting to the tower. But once he meets Jake, that he's going to start opening up and remembering exactly what his true purpose is. So I wouldn't read too much into the fact that he's not saying a lot in this movie, because I think as it goes along, he will talk a lot more. But
yeah. And another thing that I reacted to, and I think that, and this I think is both good and bad, and that's the whole thing that the movie is actually a continuation of the books.
Yes.
So we know that.
Yeah.
We know that this isn't it's not an adaptation of the books. It's a continuation of the books.
Yeah.
But when I listened to Idris talk about it, I got the feeling that I don't exactly remember what he said, but I got the feeling that he didn't think it was that important to follow, because how I see it is that even though it starts over each time Roland reaches the tower and it's just going on, it still has to be somewhat the same, or very much the same, and details can be different, but it still has to be basically the same story. And what he was saying was that it wouldn't necessarily follow the books, and they were doing their thing, and as long as they kept the feeling from the books or something like that. I don't remember exactly what he said.
Tone and the spirit.
Yeah, exactly. That would be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was thinking when I heard that was like Haven, that just started from the King book and then evolved into something else. And the same fear that people have about the Mist, that it will start with King's book and then evolve to something else. I got the feeling that they took it quite lightly, that if only they kept the main components, it would be okay to stray away quite much. Even though I think it's a good thing that they are doing a continuation of the books, because then they don't have to adapt them exactly, because that I think is impossible. So I'm all for that they are doing it as a continuation. I am still worried that they are doing it too much different from the books.
Sure.
If you understand what I mean, that
yep.
It doesn't feel like a second going around for Roland. It's like he's left the stadium and is heading in in another country. If you know what I mean, it's too different. Mm-hmm. So that is a worry I have after I heard the interview with Idris Elba.
And I think that's definitely a valid concern. I would caution, again, because people, and you just did it, people love to compare one project against another, and you have to look at each one on its own. Like you talked about the Mist going off and doing its own thing.
Yeah.
Well, if it's going to be a TV series, they're not going to spend the whole series in the supermarket mall, right? Like they have to get out of there, and so naturally they have to go beyond what was in the book. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And the Dark Tower is different, is that there's a whole story mapped out, a beginning and an end, and they will, again, it's open interpretation, and you could be totally correct that they might go way off the ranch on this. My interpretation is that they will follow the book as much as they can, but things will change, because simply when you're adapting them from a movie to a TV, or from a book to a TV, from a book to a movie, you have to make changes. And as we get into the other characters like Walter and Jake, we're going to see that what those changes are that they're trying to do. And I think overall, what I'm seeing is that they're pulling in pieces of the universe now to establish everything, so that as they go through the rest of the story, they can keep coming back to these things, so that when we get to like the end of the story and these things come up again, people will feel comfortable with it, because, like, for example, hopefully they are going to keep the Father Callahan storyline in there, so that if they ever got to like to that book in the series, when Jake, Father Callahan, go back into the Dixie Pig, everybody's going to go, oh my God, that's a bad place. We've been there. We know how bad it is. So that's really going to add to the tension of that moment. That's the kind of thing I think they're building up now. And the reason that Roland is going to the Dixie Pig is one of the things that we can speculate about. We'll probably should do that after we get through the other characters first, because I think it's important to discuss them too. But that's my take on that stuff. So it's a definite concern. I'm not downplaying it, but that's where you just have to hope and trust that the filmmakers are going to do their best to bring in the elements of the book that we do want to see. It's kind of like that Star Trek reboot, right?
Yeah.
They allowed the original series continuity to continue, but now the Enterprise crew is off on a whole brand new set of ventures outside of the continuity of the established things. And that's basically what they've done here. They're saying the books are there, whatever, all that stuff that happened in the book has happened, but now we're taking another journey, and it will be the same, but it's not going to. It'll be similar, but it's not going to be exactly the same. And we'll just have to see how far off the ranch they ever do go, which I hope they don't.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I'm concerned about is that I see it like there are two groups of people that will watch this movie, and one is the Dark Tower fans that have read the book and knows everything about that, and the other one is the general population that knows Stephen King and see, oh, here's a Stephen King movie, or even an Idris Elba or Matthew McConaughey movie that I want to go and see. Mm-hmm. That really doesn't know much about the Dark Tower and how they have changed stuff. So right. I think my fear is also that they are aiming too much to the general population and doing a movie that will be a success. So, which in one sense is necessary for them to be able to do the second movie and the third movie.
Yep.
So they have to do it, but I'm afraid that they will do too much of it, that they will lose what the hardcore fans want out of this movie, that it's becoming too general to attract as many people as possible. So that it's a very difficult balance that they have to do there to include both these groups, I think.
Yeah.
And it will be interesting to see where they put the most effort, or
for sure,
how they do it. So, but we can only hope that they are doing it good.
Yeah, that's all we can do. Like, I think in general, like with the Lord of the Rings adaptation, I think in general most of the fans were okay with it. There's parts of it they obviously didn't like, and same like with the new Star Trek movies. It's really funny to listen to, as a fan of the original series, and to listen to people talk about how it's the movies are so different from the original series. Then you see like the new fans that have never watched the original series, and they watch it and they say, "Oh, I love these movies. They're fantastic. They're great." And you're kind of going, "Oh, they're not Star Trek though." And I think that's a very valid fear that fans of the Dark Tower books are going to have. But as with the Star Trek movies, I'm going to be applying the same principles that I do. I'm going to treat the books as their own thing and these movies as another thing. I'm not going to say that trying to fit round pegs into square holes, things of that nature. You just have to treat them as two different things and just enjoy the parts that are the same. And as you said, unfortunately, movies have to play to a broader audience, so they're making changes to make it more accessible to people. And in the process of that, we're going to lose some of the things that we really like. And I think one of the big things that we're going to lose is how much of a badass Roland was at the beginning of the story, or how cold and emotionless he was. And so his journey from that to opening up again is not going to be quite as black and white as it was in the book. Whereas in the movie, he's gonna be a hard dude, but he's not going to be so bad that he's going to seem like a very unlikable character. Because I think we're going to get the Tull sequence, but I think it's going to be all the people that are in Tull are all Taheen, and they're not just like regular people. Things like that. So
will be interesting to see that, because Roland is a very cold person, and even though you don't have to go as far as him killing people, but I mean, coming to the Dark Tower is his goal, and he will sacrifice anyone and everything to get there. And in that retrospective, he is quite a cold and evil man, because he says it himself. He will sacrifice anyone to get to the tower. So, and that makes him a quite not likable person. And I don't think that they will draw that as far in the movie as well, because I think they need to have the audience cheering for Roland.
Yeah, for sure.
In a totally different way in the movie than they have to have in the book.
Yeah, I think you're going to see that Jake, Eddie, and Susanna will be making taking the initiative, or making the choice to sacrifice themselves, as opposed to Roland just sort of letting things play out.
Yeah.
That's definitely, they're definitely going to make Roland a more sympathetic character in the movies, I think, than he was in the books in the beginning.
Yep.
All right, so that's the Idris Elba article. Is there anything else you wanted to say on that one?
No, I think we have talked enough about that one.
All right, now let's get to Mr. McConaughey.
Yeah.
And his picture is one of my favorite ones of the whole thing, where he's walking through the Dixie Pig and everybody's bowing down to him.
Yeah,
I love that picture.
That's also a new picture that we hadn't seen before.
Yeah. Do you like that picture?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
And I think that it's nice looking in every way.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope they can keep that nice look in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think I don't think that the photo we see is not a frame from the movie. I think this one is probably staged and set up to get this photo. So I hope they can translate, because this looks so cool. And I think this will be perfect if they can make the movie look like this.
Yeah.
I admit that I was a bit skeptic to McConaughey being cast, if he could look evil enough.
Yeah.
Because he's basically, or mostly at least, playing good guys.
Yeah.
But I think he's pulling it off here, and I like what I see very much.
Yeah. Yeah. And his description of his relationship with Roland, I just love it. What did you think about what he said?
Yes, I like it as well. But here we have a difference from the book as well, because in the book he wants Roland to sacrifice Jake to get to the tower, or at least put Roland in that position that he has to make that decision. And here he more sounds like he wants keep Roland around to have him to amuse himself with, and to have a nemesis to fight with. So they have changed their relationship a little bit, I think.
Yep. But I love the change though. I mean, Roland is strictly about revenge, and McConaughey is like he loves this guy. Like without Roland, he has no purpose, because everybody else is too easily corruptible. Roland is the one guy that he can't change. It's kind of like a Batman-Joker relationship, which has worked well before. And I do like that. And this is where we see a change, because as soon as you cast an actor of McConaughey's caliber, you know that the character, the Men in Black, can't just be like sort of in the background around the edges. You have to make him more actively involved in the story. You don't hire an actor of this caliber just to have him standing in the corners, in the shadows all the time. So they had to find a good reason for making him more active. And I think the fact that he's running the breakers from the Devor Toy is a very excellent way of bringing him into the story more. So how did you feel about that when you discovered that he was going to be in charge of the breakers?
Well, I kind of find it interesting, because or funny, right? Really, because he mentioned here that he's walking around taking care of the breakers, having a boring time, and then he goes to fight Roland. So it's almost like he's like a normal person going around at his home doing boring things, and that he get an opportunity to go out and do something fun. So
exactly.
I like that comparison, even though his household chores are different from mine.
He's just trying to break down the tower, that's all.
Yep. So that I have no problem with those changes. What I had some problem with, if we're going to move on to the third character of Jake.
Okay.
Or is that too early?
I just, in general, I just wanted to reiterate your feelings on his look, his ability to project menace. I think it's a very stripped down look, and I think this is a mark of a good actor in that he is really making himself with very few visual cues. He's allowing you as a viewer to project the evil that you think that's in this character. So he's not doing exaggerated moves in that. It's kind of like how King writes very simply, but is able to, in the reader's mind, invoke such great images. Like, the way he describes Midworld, he says the world had moved on. And that's all he really says. He doesn't get into these like paragraphs of description about the destruction and decay. Any of that stuff happens very naturally as the character is walking through something that's like that. But so it's a very minimalistic approach, but I think it works quite well. And one of the things that came out in the interview with Idris Elba about which accent he was going to use, they talked about how long the shooting schedule was. And he said that in total it was 15 weeks. And he said he had been there for about 9 weeks before McConaughey showed up. So that tells us already how much screen time McConaughey is going to get in the movie. And it's not going to be like, he's not going to be in half the movie. He's going to be maybe in about a third of the movie. So that to me makes sense. That seems to fit with what's going on here. And so that's very interesting. But the timeline, and now if we want to jump to the next character, because I think this is where the whole project rests, is the changes that they've made to Jake. And I know you have some concerns, so why don't you take it away?
Yeah, well, they are making Jake a breaker who can either heal the tower, potential breaker, but probably a breaker, that can either save the tower or break the tower.
Right.
And we have seen that before in Heart and Atlantis and Everything's Eventual.
Right.
Those characters, and I think that really changes the whole Jake story, because he doesn't have anything like that in the book, and I don't know how they're going to play that out, because if I speculate forward, if they make more movies, we can probably assume that the Man in Black will not capture Jake, because then he wouldn't be in the quartet with Roland and Eddie and Susanna. If he isn't captured, then there would always be a fear that some evil being would kidnap him and use him as a breaker, and that would add something that we haven't seen before.
Yeah. And do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
Right now, I think it's a bad thing, actually.
Oh. Because the way you're describing it, you made it sound like it was a good thing.
Yeah. It could be. It could be. I don't think that is who Jake is, actually. I think they're changing him too much and giving him a total different purpose than he has in the books. I don't think that I want that.
Okay.
We don't know how they're going to do it, so we can't say for sure. But I think that I don't think that it's a good change, actually. Not right. I can't explain it really well.
You listen to the podcast after we're done, and you might change your mind again, because when you were describing it, you sounded pretty excited about it. I'm just teasing you. Again, I understand your concerns. I do think that really this is not a big change for Jake, because he already does have these talents, albeit to a lesser degree in the book. So this, again, is just simplifying and amping up. It's collapsing a bunch of things into one character. And from a movie perspective, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. It's going to really make it easy for the audience to understand why the Men in Black is doing what he's doing and why Roland is doing what he's doing. The question mark that you bring up is exactly those: how does this affect Jake going forward? And will he succeed his authority, I guess you could say, because of his powers to Roland, because Roland has the history and the wherewithal to get to the tower, which is something that Jake probably doesn't have. So I just think that is going to strengthen their bond. And I think the ongoing tension that the Man in Black is always going to try to get Jake during the course of the franchise adds tension to everything that happens. And especially the sequence when they get to Ludd and the whole bridge sequence, and when Jake gets kidnapped. Like, I think that's going to add a whole new level of tension to that sequence, because we know why they're going after Jake at that point. So I think that actually is going to work better. What concerns me is this change places an enormous burden of responsibility on this actor, Tom Taylor. He's really going to be the catalyst that's carrying this movie, because he's going to become we've already been told that Roland doesn't talk a lot. So in effect, Jake is going to become the voice or the device into Roland's head for the audience. And that's a big thing to ask of an actor. I can see why they've gone with an older actor now to do this, because I don't think a 10-year-old could properly do it. But yeah, this movie is going to revolve around how well Tom Taylor carries off Jake. And I'm sorry, Tom, if you're listening to me, I don't mean to be putting a lot of pressure on you, but you've already filmed your scenes, so you obviously know what's working, whether it worked or not. And I'm rooting for you, because I think Jake is probably my most favorite character. I've described him as Samwise Gamgee on steroids from Lord of the Rings. If people like Lord of the Rings and they think Samwise Gamgee is the best character in that franchise, I'm telling you that Jake is like that character on steroids, because his arc is heartbreaking and so beautiful at the same time. And I think that they're really going to amp up those moments between Roland and Jake. That father-son relationship is going to become something really special if they get to continue that in further stories. So my concerns are less about how they've changed the character and more about whether or not this actor is going to be able to carry that role, because that's asking a lot. And I would have to think that I'm not quite sure how much shooting he did, but it sounds like, I think Idris is going to obviously be in like 90% of the movie from the sounds of it.
Yeah.
But I would have to say that Jake is probably going to be another, maybe not half the movie, but he's going to be pretty close to that. So that's, and it depends how much he's in the movie. It depends how soon him and Roland hook up too, right? So if it happens in the back half of the movie, he might not be in it as much, but he's the catalyst here, because the Men in Black and Roland are both trying to find him. So everything's going to be revolving around that character, and that's a lot to ask of a young actor. So we'll have to see. But if they pull it off, I think it will be fantastic. It offsets the fact that I think part of why Jake's story is so powerful, because he's so young in the book. And here they're upping his responsibilities and making the character a bit older. So I think that's a good trade-off. So that's where my head's at with Jake right now.
Yeah, and it will also be interesting to see how they introduce Jake.
Yes.
Because I don't think it will be as much Jake looking for a way to get to Roland as Roland looking for Jake to save him from the man in black.
Yeah.
So we don't know really. In the book, Jake is having those conflicted memories that he's both have met Roland and died and met Roland, and survived and not met him. And he has those conflicting memories, and he seeks a way to get back to Roland.
Yeah.
And we don't know if that's going to happen.
No.
And we don't know, or from the photos we have seen, we know that Roland is in New York and hooking up with Jake.
Yeah.
Somehow, we don't know how. So there's also a question of how is Roland coming to New York?
Yep.
Is he somehow going through the Dixie Pig?
Or the Dutch mansion?
Yeah, some way he has to get through from where he is to New York, because he obviously won't be in New York when the movie starts. At least that's my guess, because we know they have filmed in South Africa, and there are some environment that in some photos that indicates that he is not in New York to start with. So it will be interesting to see if they are keeping this doorway like they have when he draws Eddie and Susanna, or if they are doing it in some different way, because I think that might be the way they do it now with Jake might be the same way they do it later on with Eddie and Susanna. So that is something I'm looking forward to see how they will do that, which we don't know yet. So
yeah.
And I think that is also very important, maybe not in this first movie, but then later, if we're going to see Eddie and Susanna, that they make that when he draws them, that they make it believable. And I don't know how they should do it, if they should do it like it's done in the book, that he like enters their minds and stuff like that, or if they find some other way to do it. But I think that is very important that they get it right.
Yeah, that's a nice segue into the biggest question I have about this movie is the inclusion of the pictures of the Dutch Hill Mansion, because that is a moment that you don't really need in setting up this world or the world of this first movie, unless, and I think you just sparked the idea for me, is maybe that is the portal that Roland uses to come into New York City. Because there's some of the pictures that, like, if you go to the part 4 of the Dark Tower EW coverage, and we'll put a link up in the show notes so that people reference these documents as we're going through them. Picture 4 has a picture of Jake standing in the blasted wasteland of Midworld. Now, maybe this is a dream sequence? We don't know, but he does seem to be getting into Midworld. Whether that happens physically after him and Roland have their adventures in New York City or not, we don't know, because I really don't have a clue where they're going to end the first movie. And I'm really curious if they're going to include the Under the Mountain railway car sequences or not, and whether or not Jake is going to still sacrifice himself at the end of that journey so that Roland can continue on with his journey to the Dark Tower. I kind of doubt it, but I don't know. That's a pretty iconic moment for Jake to lose. Like, there are other worlds than these. That's a big moment to lose. And I understand that moment. That line is in the movie, but it's being used in a different way. So we'll have to see. Why do you think that mansion is in this first movie? Do you think that's the portal that Roland's going to use, or is it for Jake to cross over, or is it for both?
I haven't really thought about it being a portal that Roland would use. I actually haven't thought much about him coming to New York until now that we start talking about it. So I have always thought about it as Jake's way to get back to Roland. But I think that if they are going to do the part where he sacrificed himself under the mountains, they would have to do that first. They would have to do it in the order that it is in the book, because it would be very strange if Jake seeks Roland and manages to go with him through the mansion, and then happens the thing under the mountains. And how would he would get back the second time? And it would be very turned around, I think, to do it the other way around. It could be that they are doing it and he will draw all three, Jake, Eddie, and Susanna, through doors or something like that in the second or third movie. But you never know. And it would be depressing way to end the first movie with Jake sacrificing himself and dying under the mountains. So it would be a good cliffhanger, but I'm not sure it would be the right way if they want to keep people wanting to see more. It's kind of a depressing ending, which I like, but
Yeah.
I understand that most people don't. So I guess.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. For me, that it would be a bold choice, but to build up this movie, to have Jake go through this period of time where he thinks he's going crazy, and then he finally hooks up with this guy, and then at the end of the movie he realizes how important his vision has become, and that this is something that really needs to happen. That he's willing to sacrifice himself at the end of the movie. That's Gandalf and. In Lord of the Rings, throwing himself in the chasm. That would be a powerful moment, and people would be like, they'd be out of their minds. If they don't know the story, they're going, holy crap, what now? And then, because one of the most powerful moments for me that I hope they do is Jake coming back through that mansion. But it looks to me like they're going to actually do that in the first movie. So I don't know if Jake is going to be drawn through at the end of the movie through this mansion or not. And that's the part of the movie that's got me most confused. This picture of the Dutch Hill mansion in this first movie really confuses me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to work my head around, because I hope they don't make it easy for Roland to cross over. But that should be something that is very difficult for him to do, right? Because if it's too easy, then it's time travel or something, like where you can just go back and change things over and over. And he has to pay a price to get through there, and I don't know exactly how they're going to pull that off. He's going to meet a demon and have to make a deal to get through or not. Yeah. I don't know how they're going to pull that off.
Yeah, and I think that they need to keep that from the book. When Roland he knows that there are other worlds, but it as you say, it can't be too easy. He can't just go to New York and say, this is New York. I was here last weekend. Mm-hmm. He has to be like in the book, when he doesn't necessarily has to enter their minds through a door, but right. he has to be like fascinated of this world, and I think that I found a different world and that I didn't know of, and stuff like that. I think. Yep. If they don't do that and he just enters there like he's been there a lot of times before, I think that would be a mistake.
Yeah, they have to make the crossing over seem very. Every time you do it, it's very dangerous, and there's a price.
Yeah.
If it's just like using a Star Trek transporter, that would be a big mistake, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Okay, so if we go to the article part 6, Pieces of H, and this has a nice summary of what they feel each movie is going to draw from. So I don't know if you've got that link in front of you, Hans?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So I'll just quickly run through the books here. Book 1, The Gunslinger. What we're being told by EW is that the basic structure of the book serves as the backbone for the movie. So even though they're drawing from the other books, they're not. The structure of the movie is going to follow the Gunslinger. Second book is, of course, dealing with the pulling together of the quartet, and I think that very little of this will be in the first movie. I think there was a reference in one of the articles about Eddie and Susanna would show up as tarot cards, and I think that was it. So I don't think we're going to see much of this in there, and I hope we don't, because the events of that book deserve a movie on their own. So
yeah, I think it would be too. At first, I was disappointed that we wouldn't see them in this movie. But if you think about it, it would have to be a very long movie to manage to pull all this Jake's stuff and Eddie and Susanna in the same movie. So I think that it's better that they wait until the second movie.
Yeah, the first movie has to set up the main forces, which are Roland, the Men in Black, and of course Jake. So because that relationship out of the quartet is the most important one.
Yeah.
So in book 3, this is where things get interesting, and this is where they just drop a bit of a spoiler, because we were wondering who Catherine Winnick was playing, and we thought for a long time maybe she was playing Susan Delgado. So who did she end up playing?
She is playing Jake's mother, and this is also a change from the book, because in the book we don't see much of Jake's mother.
Right.
she's just worried that he's not coming home and stuff like that. So she's really just a side character there. But this indicates that she will be involved a lot more, and that Jake might even tell her about his problems, which he doesn't do in the book, that he has conflicting memories and stuff like that. And that is also a little concern of mine, that this indicates that, as we have read about, that there was a script where Jake was sent to a psychiatrist and talk about this, and he basically told the whole story to the psychiatrist. And I'm a little bit worried now that they involve Jake's mother in this, that there will be a more telling of his problems, which will then tell more about what the tower is and who Roland is and everything like that. That they are telling us too much too fast.
Mm-hmm.
As we speculated on with the psychiatrist. Maybe he's talking to his mother or something like that. I don't know. I don't know if this is the case, but I don't see really how the mother otherwise, because since it's been announced that she is playing it, and it sounds like it's a not just a character that are flying through the screen once or twice, but someone we will actually see and interact with Jake.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that there will be a lot more talk about his feeling and what's happening to him that it is in the book.
Yeah, I'm hoping that kind of talk will be restricted solely to, because there's a shot of Jake in one of the links of him looking at his wall where he's done all these drawings showing the Dark Tower and the Men in Black, and then I think that hopefully that will be the extent of the interaction with his mother about what's going on, and I'm hoping more that they will leverage her appearance and use that as to point out that Jake's father is not around, if much at all, so that Jake's absence of a father in New York City is a lot of the motivating things for that character, as well as why he hooks up so quickly with Roland. So I'm hoping they're using the mother to build up not just her concern about Jake's state of mind, but the fact that his father is not really involved in this whole situation at all. So
yeah.
And here it even says that the Dutch Hill, a decrepit Brooklyn mansion that literally comes alive to protect the portal to Midworld. So that's interesting. That pretty well tells us that, again, speculating, that if it's trying to protect the portal, that it's trying to stop Jake from getting to Midworld.
Yeah.
So I think we might see that sequence that really belongs in Wastelands in the first movie, which is, I don't know. Yeah. I'm kind of ambivalent about that, to be honest. But
yeah, I think that is an indication that they might skip the entire Under the Mountain passage, and
they might, yeah,
just going for Jake trying to get to Roland this way.
Yeah, because if he comes into Midworld this way, then that basically takes away the need for him to come back into the Midworld again, because he doesn't die in the movie. But yeah. I think that would be a big missed opportunity. But
yeah, and even if they do the Under the Mountain scene first and he dies and then he tries to get to the mansion, I think that would take up too much time to fit in the movie.
Yeah.
So I don't think they have time to do both sequences that we were hoping for. But well, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, but it's just kind of funny when you read something like that, how they just very casually throw out the fact that, oh, she's playing the boy's mother. You're going, what? Nobody talked about this. So the next couple of books, I don't think Wizard and Glass, if any part of the franchise gets done as a TV series, I would think it would be this book for sure. What do you think about that, Hans?
Yeah, I'm hoping that they will leave Roland's past out of the movies.
Yeah.
Because I think that it would be too much. Either they would do a movie that only focuses on his past, or if they try to mix it up, I think it would be a lot of jumping back and forth. So I would like to see that they leave his past out of the books as much as possible. Maybe he's telling some stories and stuff like that, so we know some things about his past, but not much. And then they would go for a TV series, and there they would focus on his past.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that would let the movies focus on the present and the TV show on the past. And you could choose if you want to see both, if you want to see just one or the other. So I think that is a better way to set it up.
Yeah. And I also think that with the TV series, it would be not just doing the Wastelands, but it would also do any of like Roland's backstory with Court,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff as well. So all the younger Roland stuff would be done through a TV series, which would be cool.
Yeah.
I think that would be that would be a great solution. And Sony would obviously love to be able to expand the portfolio of this franchise from not just doing a movie series, but also doing a TV series. That's the best of both worlds for them. So hopefully that's their mindset as well. And I think we can say safely that from beyond that point in the book series, that all the other books, I don't think much of anything is going to be included except for the stuff that we've already noted with the Dixie Pig, and I don't think any of the other storylines and that stuff is going to be in the book.
I just want to say one more thing about it. If they do a TV show of Roland's past, they can also actually cast another Roland if they want.
Oh, for sure, it would be a totally different cast.
Someone younger, and
absolutely,
that would mean that because if they want to do like a movie, TV show, movie, TV show, movie, TV show, that would take up a lot of time for Idris Elba to play in all of those, and it would probably be quite far in between to get all this stuff. But if they do it that way, they could use a totally different cast for each.
For sure.
So I think that is a good way also.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I guess the only things that they might include, again, talking down the line, not the first movie, is in the movies they could potentially include the Jericho Hill battle. That they might be able to flash back to that. I don't know if they would do that. Maybe that's something for a TV series as well, but that's something that King hasn't written yet. That would be cool to see that brought to life either in the movie or TV adaptation.
Yeah, and I think that is where he loses the horn, right?
Yes.
So I think that could be, because that is also interesting to see if they are going to mention that at all when this first movie starts, that he has the horn.
Yeah.
To indicate to those who have read the book that this is a continuation of the books, or if they would just play it like, well, it's nothing. That I think will be interesting, because I would wish that they would somehow acknowledge that this is another turnaround, and this time he has the horn.
Yeah.
So that would put everything to rest about if this is an adaptation or continuation.
Yeah. So in general, I think for me, that's everything I had about what the books were potentially going to include in the movie. I think overall what they're trying to do is they're trying to build a framework for the whole franchise. So they're pulling in elements that we, as book readers, would not be expecting to see until later on, such as the Dixie Pig. But it's just I think if the movie does well and we do get the other movies, the fact that we've already set up the Dixie Pig now in the first movies, that when we get to it again later on in the series, I think those sequences will really resonate with the audiences because of something like that. So I think it's a unique approach. And again, I think there's a couple of things here that threw us off as readers, because King said that the movie's starting in midstream, and when he said that, we were making a lot of assumptions. Well, we thought, well, then that means that we're going to get Eddie and Susanna and Oi. And obviously it's not starting in midstream, but it's just pulling elements from the other books to build up, to make this movie more accessible to movie-going audiences. And whether we think that's a good thing or a bad thing, I guess we'll find out when we see the movie. But one of the things we talked about before, they're moving away from the opening stuff from the Gunslinger, which is basically plays out like a Western, which is a hard sell for movie-going audiences. So opening it up in New York City makes it much more accessible to the general movie fans. And then they can start getting into all the weird stuff that we're all dying to see later on in the other movies.
Yeah, yep.
The other big thing that came across was the fact that this movie is pretty modestly budgeted at around, I've heard anywhere from $60 to $68 million US, which is pretty small. I mean, it's pretty rare that a movie of that budget can visually do everything that we're expecting to see in a Dark Tower movie. So this is probably why we're not going to see Oi, or people are asking, well, how come Roland has all his fingers? So they don't have to worry about stuff like that. Even I understand the makeup for the Taheen is very physical. It's basically like you can see a sort of like a slit or something in their neck.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the fact that they shot in South Africa, I was looking at the currency conversion rate. $1 is equal to 17 rand, or 14, I'm sorry, which I don't know what that buys you exactly, because I doubt that things are 14 times cheaper in South Africa than they are in the States, but there has to be some sort of significant budget boost for the movie shooting there because of the distance that they're traveling. So I'm totally guessing that a $60 million US budget movie translates to closer to something like maybe $100 million just to do to the boost it's getting in the currency conversion when it films in South Africa. So that's an interesting fact that I don't know if too many people have taken notice of that. And a lot of movies that shot in South Africa have looked a lot bigger than they did, like Mad Max, The Last Mad Max, say that 3 times fast. The movie was shot in South Africa. And there was another one too, but I can't remember. And I was actually tweeting with a South African writer, Lauren Bukes, who's written some pretty scary books, Monster, The Shining Girls. She's worth checking out well. And she said that she didn't give me like an exact numerical equivalent, but she said this movie would gain lots and lots in terms of budget power by filming in South Africa. So that's something to keep in mind if you're kind of wondering, 60 million US, that's pretty small.
Yeah.
Pretty modest. But I think that's the right approach for Sony to take from a financial business perspective. You don't want to throw $200 million at a movie that has to make like $500 million to be profitable. You want to start out and build it up. And I think this is the right approach. And you've seen it like with movies like Deadpool, which is a very modestly budgeted movie, was around 60 million US. And it was so popular that it ended up actually making more at the box office than Batman versus Superman. And it cost like a quarter of what that movie cost. So, the profit that they made on that movie is so much greater than what they've made on Batman versus Superman. So hopefully with The Dark Tower, I think it's going to be very grounded, and they're really going to build up these 3 main characters and get us invested. And then if it takes off like they're hoping it does, that will allow them to increase the budget on subsequent movies. And maybe they'll shoot, the next movie will actually be 2 or 3 of the books shot together or something like that as well, so that Jake doesn't age too much, because I'm hoping they're not going to just keep filming one book at a time, because by the time they get to the last book, he'll be in his mid-20s or something like that. So, or he'll almost so we'll have to see. We don't know how many movies they're planning to do either. But if you
I think that also depends on how successful it is. Yeah. And how, if they can do a TV show with a past. Otherwise, that might be a couple of movies as well. So
you would have to imagine their initial plan right now is to hopefully get at least a trilogy out of it. But if it does well enough, then they'll start looking at expanding the storyline so that they maybe can get 4 or 5 movies out of it. Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to get 7 movies or 7 books. I don't know if that'll happen, but hopefully we get at least 3, maybe 4 or 5 movies out of it, and then the rest done on TV series. So that would be a good mix.
Yeah, definitely. So it will be interesting. And one thing that we haven't mentioned yet is we talked a little bit about it when we saw the Idris Elba photo in the first interview.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of his look? Is he looking like the gunslinger?
I think so. I think he looks like a knight more than a gunslinger, maybe. But he definitely, when they show those location scenes in New York City when he's fighting the bad guys and that, he looks like a knight, like a gunslinger knight cross to me. He's not a straight up 100% Western looking cowboy, so it's a kind of an interesting mix between a gunslinger and a knight, which I think works okay.
Yeah, because it's something he mentioned in, I don't know if it's these Comic-Con interviews or if it's something else. I don't exactly remember where, but he says that they were not looking for a Western look on Roland, but more of a knight.
Yeah, and I think they did that. So.
Yeah, I think as well. But something that is bothering me is that I think he looks too nice, and we have talked about this before.
Yeah.
Because he mentioned it himself, Idris Elba, that Roland is at least 200 years, and he might even be older. But his clothes and his appearance tells a totally different story. And I think that even though they don't want to make him look like a cowboy or like illustrations from the book, I think that Roland to me is someone who has been through a lot. He's been struggling. He's been chasing the man in black. He's been through a lot of stuff. And I just think that he looks too clean for that.
It's the beginning of a new cycle, though, right? So he gets a fresh start.
Yeah, but and that is also interesting, because if you see it like that he is now starting a new cycle.
Yeah.
Then he actually starts his life by following the man in black, and all his past has that really happened, or is that just something that's been implanted in his memory?
You could say the same thing about the book. Is
Yeah,
that
exactly.
because we don't know
And
how
it
many
just
times he's done it.
no, and that just hit me now because he
Yeah.
just turned back when he starts a new one. He starts with following the man in black. So has his life up until that part just happened once, and then everything else is just circling.
Yeah, it's multiverse, layers upon
Yeah,
layers, right?
it's interesting. Yeah,
Yes,
but
yeah.
what I wanted to come to is that I think that he looks too clean. He doesn't when I see him here, I doesn't see a man who's been through a lot and barely survived and is desperate to get to the tower and everything.
Mm. Yeah, I see where you're coming from, but I'd be hesitant to make a final decision until we see him in the movie moving and,
Yeah, yeah,
because we might not be seeing the proper, maybe the lighting is not showing off exactly what they're doing there. But in general, he probably does look a little too crisp. I do agree with what you're saying there, but I think something like that might not bother us as much as once we see him moving and stuff like that. That certain things that don't look good and when they're in still motion don't bother you nearly as much when you see them in action. So we'll have to see how that goes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I would actually have preferred him looking a little bit more like a cowboy than a knight. I don't know. I guess he's just not looking as I imagine him when I read the book.
Oh, sure.
I saw a cowboy.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
if we strip away the actor,
Yep. Yeah.
just the appearance, I saw more like a cowboy-ish.
Yeah, but I think is that more on our side or is that more on King's side? Because I don't really think King ever came out and called him a cowboy. He just said he was a gunslinger, which is a little
Yeah.
maybe it's just semantics, but he never said that he looked like a cowboy. He just said he looked like a gunslinger, and we're just automatically because we've seen so many westerns automatically making those connections in our mind.
Yeah, true. And
So
it probably also is because of the illustrations in the books where he
yes,
is painted more like a cowboy.
yeah.
So
Yeah, like I agree with you. I think like anybody that's looked at any of the artwork will definitely have a much more stronger cowboy flavor. But it's people watch The Shining and they think that Jack Nicholson's character really does break down a door with a hammer or with an axe, which we know doesn't happen in the book. So it's just
yeah,
one of those things that's become seeped into the pop culture because of the artwork and things that we've seen. But the only thing I would say about the uniform or his costume is like the metal buckles and that kind of throw me off. I just would have wished that those were leather drawstrings or something like that instead. That's
yeah,
about the only detail. Like, and his buttons should be like maybe laces instead of buttons and stuff like that. But I mean, this is window dressing. Once you see him in action, that stuff is not really going to bother. It's not going to bother you. You're going to forget about it because you're just so enthralled with the story.
yeah.
So.
Yeah, and to be fair, we don't know. Maybe he is dressed like a bum, but catches fire and his clothes burns and he finds these new clothes in when he arrives to New York. We don't know.
Yeah,
So
for
that
sure.
that could be the case, that there is an explanation why he's wearing these clothes. But
Yeah.
just from seeing the pictures and from how I picture him when I listen to the books and as I'm listening to them constantly now, the feeling I get when I listen to the book and the picture I see doesn't match. So
Yeah, for sure.
but that might work out anyway
Yeah.
when the movie is done. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
For me, the biggest thing is he doesn't wear a hat. And then I mentioned that somewhere else, and I think Bev Vincent said, yeah, but if you read the books, he doesn't really start wearing a hat until later on in the series. So it's kind of like,
Yeah,
it's just the art. It's just the artwork that makes you think that, right? So
yeah.
yeah,
I think they say that he lost his hat and his horn and his friends at Jericho Hill. So
yeah.
the hat might come later.
Yeah, it might. Yeah. So, was there anything else? Oh, we should talk about that's basically all the speculation that I had for the movie at this point. So, I think we do have a fairly good idea of the overall lay of the land with the movie. I think the most unclear part is this Dutch mansion, which seems to have been plucked out earlier. Maybe it will show up again. Maybe they might be doing it like the Dixie Pig that he might be going. But I think if he goes through it once and it basically tries to kill him and attack him, that the whole thing collapses. I think it's a one-way ticket. So I don't think they can reuse that later on. So I really do think that part of the drawing of the three is going to be changed somehow. And that's assuming that Jake is not alive at the end of this first movie. So that's probably the main change, and we don't know the ending as well. Like we don't know how that's going to play out. But I think we have a pretty good idea of how it's going to start. I wouldn't be surprised if the first shot, Happy Town, like the Devortois shots with the white picket fences and everything looks really nice, and then all of a sudden the man in black walks into the screen, and then you realize that this is where they're trying to break down the beams, and then it'll jump from that to Roland. I think that's kind of how the opening part of the picture is going to play, and then most of it's going to be driven by Jake's visions, and then the Roland and him will finally hook up, and after fighting a bunch of baddies at the Dixie Pig, and then somehow Roland and Jake are going to make the leap back into Midworld and start the true journey to the Dark Tower. So that's kind of how I see it playing out right now. How about you?
Yeah, I agree with what you say, and my good feelings about the movie is that they are doing it as a continuation to the books and not a straight-off adaptation.
Yeah.
The Dark Man, I think Matthew McConaughey will rule in this one. I think he looks perfect.
Yeah.
And the fact actually that they haven't or won't introduce Eddie and Susanna in this one, I think that is a good thing, because I think that or they could introduce them at the ending, like a little teaser that they will come or something like that. But I'm glad that they don't tell their story in this movie as well, because I think that would be too much.
Yep.
My biggest concerns are the changes they are doing to Jake. They are making him into a breaker and casting of Roland. I still think that is the big thing, that if it works, it could be good. If it doesn't work, I think it will ruin the movie. And as of now, I am not sure where it will end.
Okay.
And I also want to say one thing, that there's been a lot of talk about Idris Elba casting, and a lot of people are mad about that. But what really annoys me are those people who say that, I won't see this movie based on that. I mean, I am the first one to say that I'm not happy with Elba as Roland as it is now. But I think that saying that you won't see it is really stupid, because you have to give it a chance. And I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You watch a movie and you didn't like it. I mean, that happens every now and then anyway.
Almost every day.
Yeah, so that's really not a big deal. So I think it's very short-sighted to not watch the movie because it's one of the characters is cast like you wouldn't want it to be cast. So I would strongly recommend everybody to see the movie, and then if they don't like it, they could definitely say so, and they are definitely entitled to say so.
For sure.
But I mean, to not see the movie, if you're a fan of the book and don't like Idris Elba, I think that is a big mistake.
Yeah, no, that well spoken. The only thing that annoys me more than people that say they won't see the movie is they also say, I've never seen Idris Elba act in anything. Like, it's like, like, talk about having a closed mind just because he doesn't look like the character that you imagine in your mind. I mean, hey, in a perfect world, this movie would have been made 40 years ago and Clint Eastwood would have played Roland. But that time is, the world has moved on and we have to move on too. And this is where we're at now. And in some ways, this could actually end up being a better adaptation than we ever could have hoped for. I mean, and sure, the chances are that it's going to be terrible, but why dwell on that? Like, let's hope for the best, not the worst. Yeah. I think that, to make a bet with you, Hans, is that you might watch this movie and have problems with it, but I bet you dollars to donuts that Idris Elba's Roland will not be one of those things that you're going to have a problem with after you've watched the movie. I feel that strongly about how good of an actor he is. I think he's going to kill the part. Once you see him get rid of a couple of baddies, you're going to be totally on board with them, because the guy just radiates power and badassery. I think he's going to do a phenomenal job. I think we're going to have more troubles with some of the other story elements that they either drop or change, but I don't think the acting, outside of my concern that Tom Taylor can carry this picture, is going to be an issue. Yeah,
it will definitely be interesting to see. But I also want to state that I am not against Elba being Roland because I think he's a bad actor, or because he's anything else. It's just that I don't think he is the actor for this part.
Sure.
And
that's fair.
So I'm not saying that he's a bad actor, and I know. Yeah, you understand what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean exactly. Yeah. The only other thing I was thinking about, it would be a nice nod. Have you ever seen High Plains Drifter with Clint Eastwood?
No, I don't think I have.
You should check that out because he's basically it's a ghost story, I guess you could say. I don't want to say too much, but the movie starts with a shot of the desert, and there's like these heat shimmers, and you hear this choir, and all of a sudden there's this figure that's really like a mirage thing, and all of a sudden he comes out of the heat shimmers, and it's Clint Eastwood on a horse. I kind of hope they would do some sort of opening for that, and I was mentioning this. I was on Dark Tower podcast, and one of the guys said, "Oh yeah," and then they could play the Toadash bells, and I said, "Oh yeah, that would be awesome," because then you could set that in, lay that clue in people's minds, so that when they hear the Toadash bells at the beginning of this movie, that when they come on later on, they're going, "Oh, I know what that means. Somebody's going to come in or leave or something like that." So that would be an awesome way to open the movie. So that stuff like that, that's what I like to think about and get excited about, not whether or not they're going to leave in this part or drop that part or whatnot. So it's the possibilities, and they could include Jericho Hill, whether it's in the movies or the TV show. There's a lot of cool things that we never got to see in the books that could be included in the movie. So, and it's hard to believe it's just in February. It's not that far away.
No, it's soon here.
Yeah, that's kind of freaky, eh?
Yeah, really. And it went so fast. We saw all these photos of the set and stuff like that, and then now we're wrapped.
Yep. Yeah. So we just finished last week. I go, what?
Yeah. So it went very fast.
Shoot. So yeah.
Yeah. I just looked it up here, and it's 201 day until the premiere.
Oh wow! There you go.
So that's nothing.
Yeah. That's not bad at all. And the other thing that we should talk about, it's not really related to the movies, but it's this app.
Yes.
SombraCorp app, which is really, really cool. Why don't you talk about that a bit, Hans?
Yes, you can go to their site, or I guess you can search for it in the App Store or Google Store, and you can download this app that is, so far it's basically just a camera.
Yeah.
I don't think that you can. There is one section where you can log in if you're an employee at Sombra, but I don't think that one is. I don't think anyone has cracked the code for that one yet. So what it is it's called an NCP scanner. That is basically a camera, and if you take the app and your phone and look at the Entertainment Weekly cover through that app, there will be a red rose reaching out of the cover.
3-dimensionally.
Yeah, and I think this is so greatly done that I was stunned with the first time I saw it, because you can actually, if you have the cover, you can turn it so you can look at the rose from the side and up from above, and you can even pull it close so you can see there's a tag. I don't remember what he said, but you can get really, really close in on it, and if you get close in on the flower itself, you will see those yellow sparks coming out. And I think this is one of the coolest thing I've seen in a long, long time, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, amazing promotional tool. I hope they continue to support it as we get closer to the box office, or a movie release, I should say.
Yeah, and I don't think necessarily that it would have to be something with Entertainment Weekly, because this Sombra app could collaborate with other stuff as well. And in fact, you can use it on the cover of the Charlie the Choo Choo book, and some of the other, I think the one with the picture with the horn and Crimson King mark that was posted on Twitter. I think if you hold over those images, you will see like a thinny coming out that, in my opinion, isn't as good as the rose, because the rose is just great. It's mind-blowing how good it is, and the thinnies are there, but they're kind of hard to see exactly what they are, so they're not that nice. But the thing is that they could, and I don't know how they do it, if those who make the app can just say that, we want to do it on this picture, or if the picture itself has to have something in it that makes the app recognize it. I don't know exactly how that works, but hopefully it's just in the app, and that would mean that they could do it on anything. Basically. So maybe they can do it on my site. I would love to have that rose pop out of you if you app there. But you should definitely check it out. It's amazing, and you can also take photos with the Sombra app of the rose that will be saved on your phone, so you can really post them if you want, or anything else you want to do with them. So.
And I think certain I don't know how they do it. Maybe it's a randomizer or something, but certain people, when they like scan images, will get the covers and that will get slightly different images than most people will get. Because I remember Anthony Branson saying if you scan that and you get a picture of the Dark Tower or something like that, pass that screenshot on to me as well. So like most people with the cover are seeing the rose, but I think some people are seeing the Dark Tower instead or something like that. So I'm not quite sure. So there's some variation as well. So I don't know if they're going to use that some sort of randomizer for contests and things like that. So like if 900 people scan the image, like 99 might just get the rose and one person gets a Dark Tower or something like that. So they might be using it for contests later on too. So again, this is speculation, so don't take it to bank.
Yeah, and if anyone have a photo of the tower, please send it to us. Because I would love to see that. I've only seen the rose and other people having taken cool pictures of the rose when the magazine laying on top of the books and the rose coming up and stuff like that. So if you get anything else than the rose, please send in those photos because that would be really great to see.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty well everything. Oh, would you want to talk about Charlie Choo Choo?
Yeah, sure. That was quite interesting because it was announced that at Comic-Con, Beryl Evans would be at the Comic-Con and signing her book. And of course, this being a book that is really doesn't exist otherwise than in the Dark Tower book. That, of course, is quite interesting. And there were a lot of speculation who Beryl Evans actually was. And I know a lot of people thought it would be Robin Firth. Yeah. But it turned out to be an actress called Alison Davis from Los Angeles. So we don't know actually what that means, if this is a one-time gig that she did just for fun, or if this is if she will appear in the movies once they reach that stage in the story. So far, word is that she has not appeared in the first movie or won't be appearing in the first movie, but hey, who knows? Maybe they're sneaking something in without us knowing it. Anyhow, they had a few copies of the book. The number varies. Seems like there were 150 copies all in all printed. Some say 100 of those were given out at Comic-Con, and some say that 150 was given out at Comic-Con. So a very low number was given out, we can say that. And they were signed to the person who personally signed by Beryl Evans there. And literally minutes after the signing started, they started to appear on eBay for what I would consider ridiculous prices.
Yeah.
I haven't checked there really now, but I know that there were one selling for $5,000.
Crazy.
Which is like very used car almost.
Yeah.
I don't know if that person got it sold. So I don't know if someone bought it for that price. I hope they didn't, because I think it's a shame to do that. I'm actually checking eBay right now, and we have one for, I have it set on Swedish money, but it's 4,500 Swedish crowns, and I think it's about 8 crowns to $1. So it's really expensive. Here's one for 17,000. And 3,000 or 4,000. So they are selling really for really much. Yeah. There's even a couple of those T-shirts out there for sale as well.
Yeah.
So this has definitely become a collector's item, and I don't know if they're gonna print more of it. I would guess that they would, because it's a chance for the publisher to make some money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm seeing a U.S. one for it was initially $2,400 U.S. Now now it's a 16% discount. You save $405 U.S. dollars for a 19-page child's book. But this is the collector's market, and that's a whole spectrum of fandom that I don't understand. But
and it's 19 pages.
19 pages, yes. So of course, yeah.
But
yeah, crazy.
No, it's crazy, and I hope that I hope they release this book as a normal book, because then you will have, obviously it will be different because it won't be signed by the author, and maybe I guess it will be different as well because this one apparently doesn't have an ISBN number, which every book have.
Yeah.
And if they would do it like a normal book and sell it, they would have to have one of those numbers. So there will still be difference between this if you want to do a real collector's item of this 150 copy book. But I think that if if you did one and sold for a normal price, people could get it and they could read it, because it's a children's story book. So it's an interesting book, and I would definitely buy it. And I would actually consider it a Stephen King book, because just the other day I reached the part in the third Dark Tower book where King or where this part is, where the story is of Charlie the Choo-Choo. And I followed, because on Entertainment Weekly's site they have got the permission to post picture of every page in the book.
Yes.
So I followed the text, and it's identical to the one King wrote for Dark Tower 3. So this is basically a Stephen King story.
Mm-hmm.
A children's book by Stephen King, even though it's published under the name Burl Evans. So if you want to do it strict, I would say that this is actually a Stephen King book.
Mm-hmm.
Under a pseudonym. So I hope, number one, that they will release this as a normal book at the normal rate, and I hope no one pays that much money for it, because, as you say, it's a small children's book. And
I don't know if it's really a children's book though, because if you look at some of the pictures, it's almost like the It version of a choo-choo train.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be reading this to.
Yeah, it's a book that's written by a person that doesn't even exist. So it's and signed by the same person, by someone interpreting being her or something like that. So it's a strange book, and I can definitely see that it's a collector's item. But for those prices, like $5,000, I think it's so sad that to see that when books like this ends up on eBay, literally in minutes after they got them, it's so obviously that this person only went there to get something valuable to sell. Because if he or she was a Stephen King fan, I wouldn't say anything about it. If I could, I would have been there standing in line to get one. But then I would do it for my purpose, that I would want to have one. But it's so wrong that someone who stands there just to make money when there are fans who want the book.
That's free enterprise, my friend.
Yeah, it is. And there's nothing we can do about it. But I can't imagine that is the reason why they did this book. So
money.
For that reason, I hope they make it available to anyone who wants to read it.
Yeah. So this is probably the biggest piece of Dark Tower coverage we're going to get until we get closer to the movie. I'm speculating that the trailer will probably start showing up around December. We'll probably, if we're lucky, we'll get it before the new Star Wars movie. That would be great. And maybe there's a big Sony movie that's being released in the fall. I don't know. I don't have the schedule off the top of my head. So we might see in front of a teaser or something like in front of that. But I hope that they put the big trailer in front of one of the Star Wars movies, the Rogue One Star Wars movie that's coming out in December. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking that maybe we can get a trailer at the New York Comic Con in I think it's in mid-October.
Oh, they might do a teaser or something there, yeah.
Yeah, because I think there wasn't really any coverage on Comic Con except the Charlie the Choo-Choo and the fact that Idris Elba was there to promote the Star Trek movie and ended up talking Dark Tower. So I think that when we get to October, I think that we will have more to see, and I think there will be a Dark Tower presence on there. So I think that we will see more about it in October in New York Comic Con, and I would love to be there. I won't be, of course, living in Sweden, and it will be too expensive to go there just to go to that event. But I think we will see more of the Dark Tower then, and until then I don't think we have much more we can talk about, because I don't think we will know that much more until the movie is released, or even if a trailer is released.
We will continue to report on Dark Tower news as it comes up. And I think, Hans, we have to make a pledge to ourselves to try to reach out to some of the people involved with this project and see if we can get some of them on the podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully we can. And if any one of them are listening, you should definitely contact us and tell us that you want to be with us.
Absolutely.
And, I don't know about you, but I will do whatever I can to be available. Since we have a kind of a time difference. between us. But I'm very flexible and I don't need much sleep, so I can be up in the middle of the night if that's necessary to talk to some of the people.
There you go. Yeah, we're going to try to get Anthony Bresnikan talk a little bit more about his EW coverage and what else he's got planned. That would be great. And we'll see what we can do. No promises, but we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, we'll do our best.
Yeah. And beyond that, hopefully you guys enjoyed our deep dive and speculative look at what the first Dark Tower movie can be all about. And feel free to send in your speculations and anything that we didn't mention that you thought that you picked up on, you think that would be good to share with other fans. Please feel free to do so.
Yeah.
And our next podcast, are we still trying to do that video podcast chat?
Yes, I think we will. And we are going to try, or you are going to try, I guess, to write a little instruction on how to get there.
Right.
That we will post on the site. And hopefully a lot of people will show up and we will see where we go from there.
Yeah.
Let's let this be a trial. We did a trial some weeks ago that eventually turned out pretty good.
Yep.
Worked. There were only a few people there, though.
Which is okay. But
Which is okay.
And they got to be on video as well. So we thank them.
Yes, but that podcast will or video cast will not be published because it was a trial. So we didn't really speak a lot about anything. We just see if it worked. So, but the one we're doing will be the first real one that we will hopefully continue with more than later. It's fun to speak eye to eye to people from time to time as well, and hopefully we can show you some cool stuff as well on video. So that is something we aim for.
Yep.
I think that is it for our Dark Tower special.
Yes.
I think
Hope
we
you
have
all
said
enjoyed it. Yep.
Yep, and said more than we should.
Probably either made fans more angrier or happier.
Yeah.
But hopefully more happier than angrier.
Yeah, and I must say that I'm really looking forward to seeing this one, even though I have my doubts about certain stuff or certain parts of it. I'm really looking forward to it because we have been talking about the Dark Tower movie since dawn of time almost, and I'm really excited that it's happening and that we are able to be seeing it pretty soon.
And especially in today's entertainment landscape, when so many of the franchise projects that we're seeing are iterations of properties that have been around since I grew up, whether they're like Star Wars or comic book movies. It's very rare that you get like a Hunger Games or a Harry Potter. So I think this is something that will really excite a lot of people because it's going to be something brand new as well. At least I hope that's what happens.
Yeah, so it will be interesting. And hopefully you will post comments on the site, on Facebook, Twitter, wherever you want. Come here and write on my wall if you want to do that. Either way, we want to hear your comments and we want to hear what you think about it. And if you think we are wrong or right or anything.
Yep.
It's fun to hear what you think.
Absolutely. Okay. But as always, stay safe.
But
stay scared. Until next time. Bye-bye, constant listeners.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.